Cuba. What is the essence of Cuba's years-long struggle for access to the internet? And what is a weekly package? Let's take a look at how the unique island internet survives thanks to makeshift methods and bypassing restrictions. In Havana, it's easy to spot a courier hurrying to fulfill an order. He might be delivering not only food or a package to a customer. Often, the courier is carrying a bundle with a hard drive. He gives the owner access to a huge amount of all kinds of content: movies, video games, TV series, music, and all sorts of apps. To all the things that aren't easy to get due to Cuba's complicated internet situation. This is called the weekly package. It's a hard drive with a terabyte of freshly downloaded online content. For the locals, this is a good deal, because for most of Cuba, constant, stable, and cheap internet is an unaffordable luxury. The beginning of Cuban internet can be considered 1996. It was in this year, when the economic crisis caused by the collapse of the USSR continued to shake Cuba, that the first internet connection was established in the country, with a speed of only 64 kilobits per second. However, to put it mildly, relations between the socialist government and the US were far from warm, which prevented the technical capacity needed to develop the internet from being built up. Many in the Communist Party viewed its American origin with suspicion, seeing it as a potential threat to the country. Restrictions didn't start immediately. In the early 2000s, the internet was rapidly spreading through Cuban universities. And since higher education is extremely popular on the island, not only researchers but also students started getting familiar with the internet. The main changes came in 2002 when the sale of computers to private individuals was banned on the island, and again in 2006. At that time, Ramiro Valdez became the new Minister of Informatics and Communications, a living legend of the revolution who befriended Fidel Castro in his youth while serving time in the same prison cell. A staunch supporter of forceful methods and repression, he became an influential regime official. In his new position, Valdez acted aggressively, pushing through a law that banned all Cuban companies from accessing free email and chat services, like Gmail and Yahoo. The reason was this: these resources could be used by American enemies for industrial espionage. By 2008, in the old Havana district, the cultural and historical center of the capital, there was only one internet cafe left for citizens. A small room, hidden in the corridors of the Capitolio, charged $3.50 per hour for internet use. An unimaginable amount for most Cubans, who at that time earned an average of $20 a month. To access such cafes, you had to provide your passport details and address. The manager would write them down. If, while using it, a person entered words in a document or browser that were on the list of prohibited terms, which usually related to politics, the computer would stop working, and a notification would appear on the screen saying the program was closed for reasons of state security. At the same time, government employees were given full internet access, which they shared with others for a fee. Usually the client used the service at night, when the speed was better. The most powerful computer at the leading technological university of informatics was also used in this kind of illegal way. Through it, students downloaded everything from American TV shows to articles or videos criticizing the government, and then shared them with acquaintances all over the island. Even such unstable internet access created an entire underground market, and the new generation was increasingly angry at the authorities for technological restrictions. They were mostly angry in silence, expressing their dissatisfaction at home or among friends. That's why the events of January 19, 2008, at the University of Informatics seemed so unthinkable to many students. That day, Ricardo Alarcón, the former foreign minister and president of the National Assembly, one of the most powerful people in Cuba, visited the university. He was speaking to the audience when a student, Eliezer Avila, took the floor and began to challenge the officials' words, criticize the Cuban regime, and demand change. The student asked why Cuban citizens couldn't afford to travel the world, stay in tourist hotels, or access various websites. Avila's boldness impressed many, and the recording of his speech probably became the first viral video in Cuba's history. Well, viral in quotes, since it was shared on flash drives and through USB cables between computers. The idea for the future weekly package was taking shape, and soon opportunities arose to make it a reality. In March 2008, a month and a half after Avila's speech, people on the island were allowed to own mobile phones, buy computers, and DVD players. The changes were a gesture of goodwill from Raúl Castro, who replaced the country's leader, Fidel Castro, in office. Buying and activating a phone cost up to $120. That's about half of the average Cuban's annual salary. But there were still lines for the devices. The island's demand for technological change was finally beginning to be met, albeit extremely slowly. Cuba couldn't lay underwater internet cables to the island, buy enough routers, or get other equipment. The stagnation was also affected by U.S. sanctions. Satellite internet helped the situation, but only partially. It remained expensive and unstable. A solution was found in 2011 when cables started being laid from Venezuela and equipment was purchased from China. This began a long friendship between Beijing and Havana. Later, Chinese companies like Huawei and ZTE supplied the island with everything needed for the internet to work, including routers and DPI-based blocking technologies. The 1,600-kilometer-long underwater cable from Venezuela was laid over the course of 2 years, and in 2013, Cuba got fiber optics. Slow, unreliable, available to very few, but it worked. And by 2015, a tourist strolling through the historic center of Havana could easily come across groups of people glued to their phones on benches and under trees in parks. Everyone wanted to finally try out the newly available public Wi-Fi hotspots in the country. By 2016, the number of Wi-Fi hotspots in Havana had reached 85, and an average of 200,000 people used them every day. Prices also went down. In Cuba, internet surfing is usually charged by the time spent online, not by the amount of data used. The provider now charged $2 instead of $4.50 per hour. It's still quite a high price for regular use, but enough for small tasks and keeping in touch with family. Teenagers, students, adults, and elderly people all came here with smartphones or laptops to get a connection. A spot on the bench was valued and guarded by the lucky ones. Some people took shelter under a tree, while groups of friends settled on the grass. And you could always find resellers of internet cards there. To use mobile internet, you need a card, but not everyone is willing to wait in a long line for it at the provider's office. Moreover, there often aren't enough cards for everyone, so in Wi-Fi zones, there were always scalpers ready to sell a card right in the park. Usually at twice the price, but you could try to bargain. There was another serious problem as well. The slow connection couldn't handle the load. Authorization took time. Even when everything started working, the connection would drop and lag, while the precious minutes of purchase time slipped away into nothing. In other words, you couldn't even dream of downloading large files or even watching a video on YouTube in good quality. In a situation where the Cuban authorities couldn't provide citizens with quality and affordable internet, people learned to solve problems on their own. That's how the weekly package appeared. Thanks to the package, Cubans got the opportunity to download anything they wanted from the internet. Or rather, almost anything. The organizers carefully ignore political, religious, or pornographic content so as not to attract the attention of the authorities. Basically, the smugglers stay neutral toward them. Some members of the Communist Party use the package themselves. Formally, the package business in the country is neither prohibited nor permitted, which is why, according to Western media estimates, the industry of selling the internet on hard drives has become the largest private organization in Cuba. At its peak, half of the population of the 11 million-strong country used its services, bringing in up to $1.5 million a week. And the need to distribute the product mainly through couriers provided jobs for up to 45,000 people. Many aspiring musicians, artists, or filmmakers use the package to earn themselves recognition. They pay the price set by the seller, and in return, their content ends up in a special folder. Which one? It depends on the payment. You can end up in the most popular one, where reality shows and blockbusters are usually stored, or in the cheapest one, where funny animal videos are placed. Here's an example, a 2020 music video by the group La Diosa, with a characteristic line, "If you're not in El Packet, you don't exist." However, with the development of communication in Cuba, The package is increasingly taking a back seat, remaining a substitute for the internet for people with lower incomes or less tech-savvy users. Often, package sellers install the app on the client's phone themselves or explain how not to get lost among the dozens of different folders in the catalog. And what about internet censorship? It has always gone hand in hand with the development of the internet on the island. But the main challenge for the authorities came 2 years after mobile and home internet arrived in Cuba. In the summer of 2021, the country saw the largest protests in the last 30 years. Thousands of people in different regions protested against food shortages and the actions of the Communist Party. Reports about the protests quickly spread across Cuba through social media, since by that time, 7 million Cubans had access to the internet. The protests escalated in part thanks to Facebook live streams, where demonstrators broadcast what was happening on the streets. This may seem trivial in countries with advanced internet, but just a few years ago, it was unimaginable in Cuba. The protests were the result of a severe economic crisis. Both additional U.S. sanctions and the COVID-19 pandemic contributed to it, as the pandemic froze the tourism industry, which is vital for the country's budget. Since then, it has become even more common for Cubans to stand in line for hours for basic goods like chicken or cleaning supplies. Right after the first wave of protests, authorities shut down the country's internet, but that didn't calm everyone. A month after the June rallies, the Cuban authorities banned the distribution of fake or offensive information on the internet. So what about now? The level of internet penetration in Cuba increased from 40% in 2015 to 70% in 2021. Because of U.S. sanctions, Cubans cannot pay for foreign goods online and are essentially cut off from the global financial system. Thanks to this, cryptocurrency is rapidly spreading in Cuba, penetrating the daily lives of both ordinary citizens and officials. The development of the internet in Cuba continues to be seriously hindered by its high cost compared to relatively low salaries. By 2022, locals earn an average of $163 per month. After the summer protests, the fate of the Cuban internet looked much bleaker. Having confirmed their long-standing fears about the power of the internet during rallies, the authorities are ready to act tough. They suppressed all resistance, and in January 2022 started staging showcase trials. The trial began for more than 60 protesters accused of attempting to overthrow the government. At least 5 of them are under 16 years old, and in total, more than 620 people are awaiting trial. Hundreds of court cases are the result of the largest civil protests against the Communist Party since 1959. Participants in the unrest could face up to 30 years in prison. But can the Cuban leadership return to the pre-internet era of stability? Or is it impossible to put the genie back in the bottle? Write what you think about this, and see you in the next episode on our channel.